Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte episode 78. It's an early episode. I hope my mic is plugged in. Okay, it's an early episode. So let's jump right into it. And today we will have a very small changelog. We'll see. Like we had a couple of releases. Most likely there will be a new release soon, but yeah, we just had a couple of releases for this week. And then we will go in a bit of live coding. I hope I don't mess up like the other day. But early episode means I can join. Yeah, great deal. And we can see. Like 5 p.m. for me, it's a bit better, but it is what it is. Let's see. Okay, let's jump right into it. There was a couple of fixes. I think only use get computed style with elements is probably there was a bug about the fact that we were using get computed style on window, for example, or on body, or maybe even something else. So probably an easy fix, make each items reassignable in legacy mode. This is also interesting. Obviously, before items in an each loop were reassignable in legacy mode. So in legacy mode, now you can reassign. You can't do it in Svelte 5 like rune mode, but it's fine. And then we have another release, which is to improve reconciliation of inert each block rows. Whoa, a lot of fancy word. At the end of the day, like it's nothing incredible. Like reconciliation is just figuring out how, like in Svelte, we need to figure out how an element on an array, like it's tied to its DOM element, and basically, I think like if there was some each block row that was inert, so it was not touched, probably it was messed up, and so this fixed it. Properly remove root anchor node on unmount. This was a very funny one. Like I watched Dominic resolve this. Basically, like the point is, if we need to, like when hydrating and when mounting a component, we need to attach to some node. And if there was no node in like on the target that you want to attach the component, we were just creating an empty node on the fly to be able to attach the component to that node. Because like to mount it in the DOM, you need an element to attach to. We were creating a node in like an empty node, and it was never removed on unmount. So, I mean, this was not really problematic for components that actually are mounted with Svelte in the DOM and stuff like that. But it could have been problematic and actually, let's take a look at the PR, because it could have been problematic for if you were doing something pretty funky like this thing, like creating a lot of component, mount them and then unmounted them immediately. Obviously, like this is like a fancy, like it's not actually, no one is actually writing something like this, but it was to show the problem. And like this created basically memory leak. So there were a lot of nodes that were basically left in memory until you refresh the page. But now it has been fixed. So pretty interesting. And these actually took 2 days of my life because now we actually have better migration for event. And I want to talk about this because I think it's pretty interesting. So if we open a Svelte 5 preview, let's open a new one. So if you are in legacy mode, so let's say that we have these, you can have a lot of edge cases for events. So obviously, like the easiest one, like let's say that I have a situation like this. This is a legacy component. It works in Svelte 4, right? It works in Svelte 5, but you might want to use runes. So if you try to migrate these, it's actually pretty easy. Like it's just removing the on click, like the colon between on and click. It's adding state and stuff like that. But stuffs can get much more messy. For example, let's say that, I don't know, this increment is actually coming from a prop, right? So if you do this, let's go back to Svelte 4. Let's do export let increment, right? You could do this. You need to convert the props. You need to convert these. So if you migrate, is doing like this. Like it's still manageable, but then you have to remember that you have event modifiers in Svelte 4. So I can do prevent default, right? And initially, like since like before last week, we were literally adding a e.prevent default in your code, which was also kind of like in cases like these, you should basically like add a prevent default before calling increment. So that resulted in like a lot of work on the migration script. But now there's something more exciting, which is when I migrate, I'm actually importing prevent default from Svelte legacy and wrapping your component inside this prevent default. Just as an heads up, in Svelte 5, like don't use this. I know that it might be tempting, but it's probably more work than just writing e.prevent default. So I know it's tempting. And this is obviously true for other stuff like stop immediate propagation, right? This is also another function that you could have run in Svelte 4. And when you migrate, you get basically the same thing. But then you have to remember that this could be combined. So I can do prevent default. So this is actually something you can write in Svelte 4. And now it gets converted to a series of call, which is also interesting. But then you have to remember, like, there are a lot of these things. Like, let's say, for example, there is the trusted one. So this basically means that this on click is only invoked when the user click on the button and not when someone else programmatically click the button. And obviously, this is also exported from Svelte legacy. There are a couple or more like nuanced, like for example, the once. This technically is a property, like on when you do add event listener, you can specify the once property as the third argument, and that will mean that it will automatically remove the listener. In this case, it's a bit different, so we are basically faking it. So again, don't use it. Like if you can, just try to use the browser. And there's also another very interesting bit now. So all of this is something like it's something that, like at the end of the day, is not that messy. But then you have to remember that, for example, you could do something like this in Svelte 4. So if you do something like this in Svelte 4, you are basically bubbling the event to the component. Now, we were migrating this by accepting a prop called onClick and calling that prop, which is fine, but there is a problem. If you try to migrate a component, we can't actually migrate the onClick on the component with something else. So let's say that I have this component, let's call it A, and let's ignore what it is. Like I just want to have like import A from A.svelte, right? If I have A on click, is equal this is because I am expecting the component inside. I don't want to spoil it. So I'm expecting the component inside. So I'm expecting to dispatch an event on click, which I can listen on. And we can't actually migrate this component. So if I try to migrate, you might not control this component. So if it's a Svelte 4 library, we can't change this to on click for you. Because if the library did not update to Svelte 5, you will get we will broke your code. So, but there was also another problem. So if you are writing a component and you are expecting it to bubble when you are using the component, we can't actually just change this thing to a prop with on click. Oh, I can write. What am I doing? We can't actually export these just with an on-click property. So this was actually a rich idea, and it's very elegant in my opinion, because now this gets migrated to this. So we have this create bubbler from Svelte legacy, and then you can bubble click, which is very nice. And this is especially true because there is another catch to events. In Svelte 4, you can have multiple events. So you can have this, you can have on click is equal to this. And this is basically from where everything sprouted from. Because I want to show you, initially what we were doing is we were just taking all the code from all your handlers like this. So initially we were doing console log e, for example, and console.log e, right? So let's say that you had code like this. Initially we were rightfully taking all the code here, sticking it into one event listener, and then run that a single event listener. But that's not properly true, because when you, for example, let's say that here I do e.stop immediate propagation, this shouldn't run. So yeah, we needed something like this, but also there is a lot of gotcha. That's what I'm saying to you. Also, this is something, but this handler and this handler should run at the same time for the browser. This means that if instead of doing stop immediate propagation, I do throw something like this, if I take this code and I stick it into one event listener, this will never run, while instead it should run. So can you see what I'm getting at? So likely at the end of the day, we figure out a way. And also this, I think it's quite elegant, because now what we are doing when we are migrating something like this, we are using this handler function from Svelte legacy. So we pass handlers, and this basically return a single handler, but inside it's using a lot of logic to make sure that these and these gets run just like if they were different handlers on the same element. But obviously you also need to make sure that everything else work in the meantime. So if I have an on click here, I will need to add the bubble. So we do it, but I can also have an on click / prevent default, for example. And having the function, I think, really helped shaping something that is functionally the same, and it's also quite elegant to read. So as you can see, there are multiple handlers, the bubble one, the prevent default bubble one, this other one. So yeah, at the end of the day, you basically get kind of the same experience. with like not too much problem. And obviously, like let's say that here I have on blur, for example, we will also need to account for that. So, but like we did it, and without complicating too much the code, and without uh, like I think this is a perfectly elegant solution, and I'm very happy about it. There's only last thing that actually you can't do with events, and it's passive and non-passive. So before you can do something like on wheel and set this to passive. A passive event just means that you can't prevent default on this event, and this basically helped the browser to be more reactive, in the sense that like it's a performance gain. And technically, like you can't do this with a higher order function, because basically like this needs to be declared when you actually add the event listener. So if you do something like this, we only had one option, and it's this. You can import passive, and this is an action. So these are basically there are two actions, passive and non-passive, and we use passive with the event name and the handler here, so that basically you can actually get the same experience. So there were a lot to like figure out, a lot to do, but I think at the end of the day, like this will actually help migrate. Even I mean, I don't think anyone wrote code like this, but I think like this will help migrate a lot of stuff. um Theo said, I will miss this event forwarding syntax. To be fair, I don't think I will, because I personally, I kind of never used it. Like the event forwarding, yes. So the fact that you can just do on click, I've used it, but also like it's pretty easy to just get a prop. It's a bit more work, but like it's not the end of the world. And what we gain with like having event as props is that we can spread them, which is super cool. Because if you ever build a reusable button component that needs to take all the events in, you can imagine the madness. You need to allocate every listener, which was kind of bad. So yeah, that's cool. um yeah, exactly. So you'd be passing an on-click handler prop to a component that doesn't expect it, so that's why we can't migrate components for you. um And then on the other side, if we are migrating your component, we can't just add an on-click props, because then it will break at the usage side, because we can't migrate that. So it was very like a very so overhauling something as central as the event system is really a huge task. How will we make sure users won't just continue using all legacy helpers, like a warning or something to nudge them? Well, I mean, I I think like the fact that uh, it's exported from Svelte legacy, it's still uh, it's still like, I don't know about you, but like if I am importing something from legacy, I'm never like committing that very gently, because I know that it can go in the next version. So yeah, I will probably like slowly, like this basically needs to be, it needs to be documented, obviously. And like the name suggests that if you want to use it, you might need to prepare yourself for a heavier migration when Svelte 6 will come. So it's up to you. You can use it. At the end of the day, I don't think, like, if you are writing fresh code, uh, why should you go into the trouble of creating a bubbler, creating the bubble function and pass bubble, when you can just accept an on click as a prop? So yeah, I think like this was pretty good. So yeah, just to Okay, we can close this, and I think the changelog is actually done. There is some new SvelteKit release to support typed arrays in load function. So typed arrays are, for example, uint8 array, uint16 array, uint32 array. Those are basically the kind of array that a blob is used. So generally they are used to like contain information about a file, for example. If you read a file from the server, you can either read it as a string or as a uint8 array. And so basically now you can return that from a load function, and it will be properly deserialized on the client, which is cool. I mean, it's not something that you probably want to use very often, because like I don't see a reason to use it, but having it is better than not having it. There's also open a new tab for form target blank and button form target blank submissions. So this is basically like when this target blank is the same that you can add to a link. And when if when you click on a link with a target blank, it will open on a new page. And before, when a form had target blank and button form target blank, and you were using JavaScript, we were just submitting the form. And like this, with this new PR, it's actually opening a new tab, which is cool. Let's see if there's any other fix Svelte indent, ensure proper snippet indent. Pretty cool. Create Svelte, update TypeScript ESLint config, roll up plugins, add pug mixins to support Svelte 5 syntax. This is also like, I don't know who is still using pug, but I know that is loved by a lot of people. So people are actually using pug to write Svelte component, which is cool. And now they have also mixins to the mix. And if you're not aware, pug is basically a way to write HTML, which is super concise. Like you can just do, it's sort like emmet, like you can do p time 2 and stuff like that. Course, first quote style inside style directive, present comments in, like this is prettier program, prettier plugins belt. Properly determine end of snippet parameter with TypeScript annotation. TypeScript plugin, Svelte to TSX. So we had a lot of, we actually had a breaking change for Svelte 5, Svelte check. Oh, this is actually true. So basically before, since a component in Svelte 5, it's a function now. And since it's a function, it needs, like basically before, we needed to lie a bit to TypeScript, so you could still continue using Svelte 4 component that are classes inside the editor without getting errors. So basically, we kind of needed to like tell, okay, this is a function, but it's also a class, so don't worry. So it's one of the trickier TypeScript thing to do with Svelte 5. And I think this was fixed by Simon basically for this. So now, like the language server is actually more aware of the fact that a component is in run mode or not. So honestly, I don't know enough about this to explain it to you, but yeah, it's also pretty interesting that now we are lying less to our editors. So that's the changelog. Let's move to the quick announcement, which is obviously Svelte Summit on October 19. If you submitted a call, we might send you an email soon. And obviously, if you want to sponsor, there's still time. And a big shout out to Kevin and Brittany, which will, as usual, do the MCs for Svelte Summit, and I can't wait for it to come. And also, just like we are in Svelte Society team, please join our Discord, which is svelte.dev/chat, so that you can talk about whatever you want. Now, let's move to the actual meat of today, which is a lot like it's action centric. We will talk about actions a lot here, because there are a couple of things that I want to live code with you. One is an indeterminate checkbox. And this is something pretty interesting. I don't know if you know about it, but if you go to MDN indeterminate checkbox, you can see that there is this property indeterminate, which, by the way, yeah, it's a pseudo class, but yeah, I think here HTML input element indeterminate property. So this is a property that you have on checkboxes, and you can only check, like you can only set this with JavaScript, and you can set it to a Boolean, and like literally you can't set it in the HTML, which is kind of dumb if you ask me. But basically this is the result. Like you have this indeterminate checkbox, which kind of means is not checked, is not unchecked. So it's a state in between, because maybe let's say that you open a website, like the checkbox is not selected, but is not selected. Like the user never interacted with it. So this is basically like you can consider this sort of initial state of the checkbox. Is not actually the initial state, because by default the checkbox is actually unchecked, and as you may see, like the moment you click on it, it's actually switching to checked, which kind of like you can use this for something where the user is not actually, like you don't want the user to have the thought of, oh, I don't want these. Like you don't know if the user wants this thing or not, so you set it to indeterminate. It's a very niche use case. But it's also used for something else, and we will actually see what's this use case sometimes. So let's actually jump right into it. Let's say that I have, I don't know, a series of, I want an array, and I have, I don't know, filters, right? And I have, like the first one is false, the second is false, the third is false. And I want to have a checkbox for each of these filters. So let's create a checkbox component, right? So I can create a checkbox, and I don't want much here. I want just to script let is equal $sign props, and I get actually I get, let's do this for the moment. Props, I just want to have all the props, and I want to set it to input type is equal to checkbox. And actually, considering that this needs to be a checkbox, I will actually spread props before, so that even if you pass type, you will not overwrite the checkbox prop. Now, I could do this. That will work the same. But let me do this so that we can save time later. So I can import my checkbox, import checkbox from checkbox.svelte, and let's say that I can do each filter. So let me do filters. As filter, I want to have a closing each. I want to have a label. I want to have a label for filter. Let's actually do I want the I here, filter I, and then I want to have a checkbox where the ID is filter. I don't need this actually. Filter I and checked will be filters at I. And now, if I want to do this, I can't actually bind checked, which means like I want to get the actual value back. So let's do checked, which is bindable, right? So, and now I can do, oh, I need to move this later. I can do this, and now let's do bind checked. So checked. So this means that whenever I I change checked, I can actually bind to this. Filters. Okay. So this means that whenever I change this, and let me actually add a proper label after it, filter I, right, +1, so that we can have readable things. So this means that, like, let's say that I move here and I just do this and I show all the filters. Whenever I check these, I actually get true, 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 true. Oh, okay, so true, false, and stuff like that. Now, let's say that I want to have like, okay, in this case, it's probably fine, but because there aren't much, but let's say that I want to have for li, we have a line. Let's say that I want to have a select all thing, right? And that's why, like, that's one of the pattern where some people uses indeterminate checkbox. So I can have a select all checkbox. So, and basically what I want to do is I want to have, what I want to do is I want to have, so select all, like this. And I want to have checked is equal to, so let me do select all. Now, where do I want these checked to be, like, checked? I want this to be checked when all the filters, so filters dot every filter actually. So filter is not defined, filters. So basically, like, this will be checked if every filter is checked. So if I do this will automatically be checked. I also want to have, actually, I can actually already do it because I can spread events. So I want to do something like on change. So I want to change this. And what I can do is if e.target.checked, I want to do something. So let's say that when e.target is equal to checked, so if I'm checking this, I want to select every filters. So I can do filters is equal to array. I think I can do array filters dot length. So I create an array of length filters of the same length, and then I want to do keys to get the keys of it, and then I want to do map, and I want to return true, I guess. Yeah. So, and I want to do, I can actually avoid doing this, and I can just say that I want this, like I want this to map to event.target.checked. This is basically very easy to set this filter to an array with the same length. And so I am creating an array with the same length. This creates an array of empty nodes. I'm looking at the keys of that array. So it's just 1, 2, 3. And I am mapping over and I'm returning event.target so that it's actually the same. So what this means is that if I select these, or everything else gets selected. If I deselect these, everything else that gets deselected. Now, where intermediate is interesting is because what should the value of these be when you do this? Because, I mean, we already saw that if I select everything, it goes to selected, right? I need to spread the array just for one reason, because this is actually not an array, it's an iterable. Actually, I should do this. I think now it's working only because I think now, like in modern browser, they added support for map on iterable, but actually should be this. And it needs to be spreaded because keys, it's an iterable and not an array. So what I was saying is that, like, when I select everything, select is actually checked. When I deselect, it goes to empty, but it's not really empty. Like, it's not everything is deselected, because if I do this, everything is selected. If I do this, everything is deselected. So I would love to have an intermediate state, right? When you select everything, but like you select some, but not everything. So I can use intermediate. So how can we implement something like this? And the answer is actually surprisingly simple. So obviously, I want to pass an intermediate. Intermediate, I think it is. So when is this intermediate? And this is intermediate when some of these are true, but not so, and not every, right? So when some of these are filtered, like when some of these are true, but not every of these is true, then we want to have it intermediate. So we can actually do intermediate. I'm very bad at spelling. Let me actually check. Indeterminate. I am very bad, apparently. So indeterminate. So let's just print indeterminate just for the sake of it. Determinate. So we can see that it's false, and it's true when it's like this, and it's false again when it's like this. So how can I actually do this? We've seen that like there's no indeterminate attribute for this. So what you need to do is, I give you an int initially, but it's an action. So use set indeterminate. So I can use node, and I can use this action on, so use set indeterminate, and I need to pass indeterminate in as a prop. And so I can get this indeterminate, and what I can do is, if indeterminate, then I will do node.indeterminate is equal to indeterminate. Else, I actually think I want to, so if it's start false, let me see. If it starts false, do I want to set it to false? probably node.indeterminate is equal to false. And it's not all, like, because this indeterminate will actually change over time, so we need to do the thing. So we want to do return, we want to return destroy, not destroy, sorry, an update, and this will take the new indeterminate, and we can basically run the same code here. We can probably abstract it into its own function, but for the moment it should be good. So now that we have these, we can check. So let's see that we do this and it doesn't work for some reason. Let me see. Oh, because I'm actually using indeterminate here instead of new indeterminate. Oh, and actually I can just do this. Probably. I don't need if. Let me see if it's true. Then I can just do this. Yep, as you can see, now is an indeterminate, and it should be false as soon as I switch to everything, and it should be back to indeterminate, and it should be empty when it's back to here. And if I select everything, and if I deselect everything, and it just works. So, and if I select something and then I click here, it goes to everything. So it's a pretty simple implementation. Like, you're just setting indeterminate to this, you're just setting indeterminate to this. But I think it's pretty effective, right? Like, I stumbled upon this at work, and I was amazed by the simplicity of this solution. So, and I mean, I actually implemented this in Svelte 4, and it's even a bit more annoying because you can spread events and stuff like that. So in Svelte 5, it's even more beautiful, and I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's it. That's the thing. So let's move, because now, like, we actually seen an action in action, which is this one. Yes, I can share the REPL link in chat. Actually, thank you for reminding me. Actually, I think it's a bit too big, so let me quickly do something. I should do this later, but let me quickly do something. I will share it in a moment. So let me just create a small link for you. Okay. I will share it in a moment. Thank you for reminding me. In the meantime, let's see another small thing about Svelte 5, actions and classes, which is pretty cool. So we can remove actually the checkbox. We want to go back to, let's go back to, yeah, we need a preview REPL link minifier. I mean, I don't know when the REPL will actually be official, like when we fix all the docs and stuff like that. I don't know if we will stick to something like this, or if we will go to something a bit more, how can I say, like the normal REPL. We will see. We will see. So I want to refresh because I hate the white there. So let's say that we have a very simple action, right? Function logger, and as before, like, we're getting the node. I actually don't need the node because I just want to watch the second argument, which is, I don't know, the object. And let's say that I do console log $state.snapshot object, because this might be state. And then I want to do return, and I want to have an update function, and this update function will also console log this. Very easy. So let me do this new state, and let me do this update, and let's do new obj, and let's log new obj, right? Very, very easy. Let's say that I have an object here, and I don't know, I have something, count here, which is 0, right? And I want to do this. So let me rename this to obj, and I want to say that obj.count plus plus. And here I want to show obj.count, and then I want to have a div here with a use logger, and I just want to use this basically as something to attach the logger to. So I can pass obj in, and now as you can see, I get new state, and then whenever I click, I get new state update count 1, new state update count 2, new state update count 3, right? Pretty easy. Obviously, like this function. Okay, so why do we need state.snapshot here? It's not really needed. It's just because if you are logging a proxy, I will show you what happens when we don't have state.snapshot. We will get a warning to say that your console log contains state proxies. Consider using inspect or state.snapshot instead. The reason why you get this is because since object is technically a proxy, in the console, you will see the proxy with the original value, and that can be pretty confusing. So that's why we added this warning. We are still showing you the snapshot so that you can actually get the value. But if possible, I'm going to use state snapshot when logging something just for the sake of it to avoid getting this error. So, I mean, this works, right? It's pretty cool. Whenever I update count, I get a new thing. But now, let's say that I want to have a class like count, class count, and this obviously should use the Svelte rules. So I can have actually class, let's do class obj, and I can have count is equal to $state, and obviously I will do constructor, which will take number, and I will do count is equal to number, and then I mean I can even do this dot count. Sorry, this dot count is equal to number. I can even do an add function, but I think this is enough. So let's do const class obj is equal to new obj, and I'll pass 0, and then I want to show this instead. So currently everything should work. Like obviously here on the logger I'm still using obj, so we will not see anything here, but this works basically as before. But now watch what happens when we pass class obj. Well, first thing first, we don't get to see the log. Just for the sake of the demonstration, I will implement a toJSON object, and basically whatever you return from here, you will actually get so count is equal to this dot count. So the toJSON is what gets invoked by JavaScript, like when you do console log of a class. So just to see it, we can see, but now we can't actually see the log. So why is that? Like before it was working. The problem lies in the fact that, as you may know, classes like kinda block the reactivity. Now, shouldn't it be static? No, it's not static. I mean, probably. Like I think probably like either static or dynamic. No, actually, it needs to be dynamic. Oh, you know why? Because it needs to be dynamic, because you need to have access to these inside toJSON, because every instance has a different log, right? So you actually need to have access to this. So what I was about to say is that, as you may know, classes are not deeply reactive. This means that, like, if you have a class, you have reactivity inside the class, but instead of a proxy like these, like classes are not proxified. Um, and obviously, like, you can't actually proxify a class. That's also part of the reason. Performance wise, it would be terrible. So considering that class already has like their own internal reactivity system, um, you can, like, the whole object, like, you need to access count to be able to have this. So if I pass class object dot count, it should actually work perfectly fine. But if I want to pass the whole class, I can't actually use the update function, because this update function will run when this changes. And class object never changed. Like, it's the same instance, it's the same, like, you never reassigned class object. So what can you do to fix this? And answer may surprise you, but it's actually effect. So if you know that you will need to, like, mess with classes and stuff like that, a good way to handle is using an effect. So you can use effect and uh, sorry, I'm laughing because don't use class. um, I mean, classes, especially in Svelte 5, are pretty cool. Like, they get a lot of performance because, like, they are much more optimized than normal objects, like literally by V8, by the JavaScript engine. So and also, like, if you don't mess with like the OOP part of class, so like the hereditary, I don't know if I told that, like, correct, but it's pretty cool to have, like, data and methods about that data all in the same place. So it's a good pattern to use. So you can use an effect, because effects, like, you're used to declare an effect literally inside the component, and that works. But you can also, like, use an effect inside an action. And this is pretty interesting, because here you can literally do whatever. Like, in this case, you can log the class inside the effect. So if you want to, like, I don't know, console log, you want to console log object.count inside here, you will get the thing, and you can also clean up. So let's say that you want to register an event listener, and you also get the cleanup function, so that, I mean, you actually don't need the cleanup in this case, but if we do this, you can see that it's actually working inside the logger. So you're passing the whole class object. The update function is not called again, but you can access everything inside the class. So in this example, however, isn't fewer lines better? You're not actually, like, using fewer lines. You're actually using fewer lines for the logger itself. If you talk about isn't fewer lines for the object better, like, you should use object instead of the class, yes, probably. Like, if you want to have something this simple, it's not even worth to use a class. I just made up this because it's an example. But the point is, now you're actually accessing count and it's actually reactive. And probably before, I was using the wrong thing, because, like, before I was logging the whole object. That will not work anyway. If you log the whole object, like, it's not working, because the object never changes. But that's also true. Like, if we go back to the old action, like, even if you are logging object dot count, if you know that you will have a count, that will still not work. So you will need to use an effect to have object dot count reactive inside an action. So in theory, I think using effect is better for action if you can, because oh, I'm going into the wrong direction. So if you can use an effect, is better, because the effect inside the action is simpler, and it also will work with bot cases. So if I do object.count here, this will work. And if I change this to be object, and to be object here, and to be object here, it will still work anyway. So this will work with bot syntax, and I think it's a good pattern, and it's something that it's good to be aware of. So I've told you that it would have been quick, and as I've imagined, it was not quick at all. So, but that's all for today. I will share the link for the two REPL. So let me quickly do multiple request so that I can give you the link. So this is the first REPL. Let me do a terminal checkbox. So this is the link to the first REPL. You should be able to access it soon. And I will also provide a link for this REPL. So thanks everyone for joining. I hope you learned something. I think it was a fast one. I mean, actually, it was an hour, so I still blabbed a lot. But thanks for being here. Thanks for being here every week, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.